că industria recrutării nu a văzut suficiente revoluții, însă ne promite că e aici ca să schimbe acest lucru. Să-l ascultăm! Soluției software HeroHunt, prin care ne ajută să reperăm cu ajutorul inteligenței artificiale.
Oh, hello there, recruiTECH Romania. I'm very happy to be here today. I was also at the event last month in Hungary, so very happy to share my story, our story with HeroHunt.ai and share some insights from the market that we have learned so far, looking at our users and looking at everything that has been going on in the recruitment industry, which is insanely interesting, of course, especially looking at all the automation developments and AI developments in the recent months, actually, and years. So I'm very happy to share my story with you. I'll share my screen with you so you'll also have a view on the presentation. I think one of the most important things from an introduction perspective is that I'm the co-founder of HeroHunt.ai, together with my actual originally Romanian co-founder, Lucian Chimo. We have developed this AI talent search and engagement engine, and we have learned a lot from the recruitment industry. So yeah, very happy to share some of those insights. So I think what the current state of recruitment is a very interesting one. When I do recruitment myself, which I'm still doing in some cases next to building our software solution, is that I really feel like I am an administrator. And that is, I think, something that most recruiters share with all the manual actions, copying and pasting data, transactional communication, which is always standard and repetitive, all the importing, exporting, switching between applications. We don't want to be administrators, I guess. And what I think a very important shift is going to be is that we're going to be gatekeepers instead of administrators. Gatekeepers decide on who will enter the organization, who will be introduced to the hiring company, and why they will be introduced and in what way. So gatekeepers will guide that whole process of human-to-human interaction. And this development will be possible by the actual developments in AI and automation that we have seen recently. I hope that is a vision that you will share with me, and I'll walk you through what I see in the market and what we provide as a solution as well, but especially also the recruitment approach that you can deploy and adopt to be more successful in your current job. So from a search perspective, there's something very interesting going on. Of course, in the recent decades, almost anyone now has an online presence. I like to call that the digital footprint of the candidate. On LinkedIn, there are over 900 million professionals, but also look at alternative platforms like GitHub and Stack Overflow. GitHub, if you are in tech recruitment, you shouldn't miss out on these platforms. So GitHub has over 100 million software engineers, more than on LinkedIn, actually. And Stack Overflow has around 20 million plus tech talents. What is even more interesting is that 75% of those candidates are passive candidates, so not openly looking for a job, not spending the time on job boards, not reaching out to recruiters, not having the open to work label on their recruitment profile. 75% on average are passive, meaning they're currently employed and not necessarily looking for a job, but 85% of those are actually open to recruiter outreach, which is, of course, the biggest opportunity for recruiters in the current age. In tech, it's even 93% of candidates that are passive job seekers. So using a proactive approach to search and outreach is proven to be very effective, actually, and getting a relatively high response rates, which I will return to in a moment. So from a search perspective here, what's important knowing that almost any candidate has an online presence and that they're mostly passive. One is that you make use of all the data that's available. So most recruiters nowadays are still dependent on one single platform for as well search and outreach. And we all know that's the blue devil of whatever you want to call it. That's LinkedIn, which is still remains a very important source of candidates and of outreach as well, but it's not the only place to look for. So the first point is more platforms, more profiles, more data. That definitely accounts for us as recruiters. Make use of that data, and you'll have a very much of a differentiator compared to others in the industry. The second is that obviously you're not going to go through 1 billion candidates manually yourself. You should search and make use of some kind of filter system, AI system that can interpret language on profiles, etc., to make sense out of those profiles and pre-screen those profiles. So you only have to look at the top 50 or top 100 candidates that are presented to you as a final check. And then I think one of the most interesting differentiators for you as a recruiter, and hopefully a gatekeeper and not an administrator, is that you can automatically find verified contact details so that you are not dependent on your LinkedIn outreach, which is fairly expensive, obviously, and that you have a differentiator with, for an example, email addresses that you can use to reach out to candidates. We obviously build upon these fundamental principles, and I always like to show the practical side of things as well. So what we do as a talent search and engagement engine is make available all those profiles. So 1 billion profiles are accessible in our search and engagement engine from LinkedIn, GitHub, and Stack Overflow, which recruiters use to actually find those candidates, but also pre-screen those candidates based on the AI system behind it and the analytics that we provide, and find their contact details in about, on average, 85% of cases. We also like to automate things. That's what we're here for, actually. One of the things that we do, for an example, is when you're, for an example, looking for a DevOps engineer, whatever, sales executive, operations specialist, can be any type of role, is help you with the automation, further automation of your search. So it will automatically build the search for you, basically, include all the different ways of writing of several keywords, and based on that, make your life easier as a recruiter. So you don't have to spend too much time on Boolean strings and those kind of things. So that's search. I think one of the most interesting parts to look at as a recruiter, because it's also one of the parts where most things go wrong. A lot of typos, or just one single typo, can already change a lot in your search results and your effectiveness as a recruiter. So you want to automate most steps of the process there, also from a search perspective. Now, let's talk a little bit about outreach. So you have found that candidate across platforms using the right data. Now you obviously want to reach out to those recruiters, but I don't prefer to talk about outreach because it really emphasizes the one-off, get lucky kind of one shot, one kill outreach message, and then spray and pray and hope that a candidate will react to your first outreach message. That's usually not the most effective way. So I like to talk about engagement. And engagement is a lot more about having several touch points with the candidates, which can be proactively. So let's say, for an example, sending 3 messages. So one first message with 2 follow-ups over 2 weeks, instead of having one message and hoping that the candidate will respond, has the time to respond in that exact time. Engagement has proven to be a lot more effective than just a single outreach message. And it's even that much more effective that you can easily double the amount of response rates that you get, the reply rates, and also the amount of interviews that you book consequentially. Obviously, I have some proof from that, from our data, from market data. So I'm very happy to share that. That's open data that we always share with users, for example, that use the platform. So 80% of outreach on average from recruiters is opened. So, and this includes the terrible standardized messages that some people choose to send, and also includes the automations that have gone wrong. So even with those included, 80% of outreach is opened. 22% of outreach on average is replied to. So 22% of every message that you send is replied to. So imagine what can happen when you send 100 messages a day. You'll get 20, probably more than 20 responses in your email box. 8.5% of outreach is replied to with interest. So that's almost half of the replies that you get. On average, will be an interested reply. So it's definitely worth sending emails nowadays. And in some cases, for some roles, if you have verified email addresses, personal email addresses, you will even see a higher conversion rate than on LinkedIn. Depends, of course, on the role, the geography, and those kind of things. But in some cases, email addresses will show a higher conversion rate. So from a follow-up perspective, which I talked about from an engagement perspective, seeing the outreach part as an engagement instead of as a one-off outreach, follow-ups prove to give a lot more responses than a single message. So if we look at the data, we see that the first email will give you a 63% open rate and an 8% reply. That's not close yet to the average that I shared. So how to get to a higher reply is the second email already gives 12% open plus 12% open rate. So that's a 75% open rate in total, but it doubles. So only the second email, so one follow-up, doubles your reply rate. So you see here how important it is to actually follow up on the emails that you have sent earlier. The third email gives you another 4% open rate and another 4% reply. And then from the fourth email and up, it's less effective to keep sending follow-ups. But in some cases, it can actually increase the reply rates as well. The optimum here is 3 emails in total. The optimum for sending your next follow-up is usually 6 days. So 6 days will be the interval that will give you the highest increase in replies from your messages. So let's say, for an example, you send the first message, 6 days later, you send the second, and another 6 days later, you send the third message. Personalization in this sequence that you send is very, very important. Imagine receiving a message that's highly standardized, where someone doesn't even mention your first name. That's obviously not very motivating to respond to. So we see from the data that personalization really helps to getting a response and an interested response from candidates. Think about using a first name, obviously, in your salutation, but also referring to the top 3 matching skills, for example, that you have seen on their profile, or that your automation tool has seen on the profile. The platform that you have found them on, the location, the company they've worked for, the role they have been in. All this information, if you include that in your outreach messages, you will see a much, much higher response rate from candidates. All this combined together will create your engagement engine. And obviously, you don't want to do this in a manual approach, because one of the most time-intensive parts of recruitment has also proven to be the communication process, the outreach process, this engagement process. So a big part of your work as a recruiter can be automated from a search perspective, but an even bigger part of your work as a recruiter, that's primarily manual in most cases of recruiters who don't don't use automation tools to an advanced level, will be also able to be automated in this case. And I'll show you how. Before I'll show you how our software does that, what's important from an engagement perspective is to sum up that you hyper-personalize outreach, so that you include all those details, personal details from the candidate, that you send automated follow-ups, like I've shown you, there's enough proof for that, and that you do some kind of analytics of how effective your outreach has been. For every role, every geography, there will be different amount of responses, and you want to measure how well your messages are responded to because of several reasons. One is because you want to keep improving on your outreach approach. Some of your messages might work, some of your messages might not work, and you want to know that. And the second thing is that you want to track sending analytics, because you also want to communicate something back to the person, the hiring manager, or the company that you're hiring for when you're an agency, for example, because you can communicate that way what's available in the market, what's responded to. And if you have proof of that, there might be a good reason for the hiring manager to change, for an example, their requirements, to let loose some of the requirements that they have initially set up. So that sending analytics and the engagement analytics, that's crucial to be able to communicate clearly to the hiring team and improve on your search. How we do that, in how we have built that in our own software. So we have gone through the whole process, seen what recruiters do manually, and also experienced that ourselves continuously. Based on that, we have designed this process and automation, far-going automation actually from an engagement perspective, where we say, okay, you can basically reach candidates on autopilot. So Engage in HeroHunt will entirely automate this sequence of adding candidates to a sequence, finding their verified contact details automatically, sending that personalized message, including the personalizations. Like in this case, I chose platform and first name, but you can also include top matching skills, for an example, their company they're working for. You can include scheduling. So what I talked about from an engagement perspective, 6 days, for an example, is the optimum for sending a follow-up. In this case, a follow-up is sent 6 days after the first message, only if the candidate hasn't replied to your message. And this single follow-up is actually doubling my response rates, also in this example, for this lead EVM engineer role, which is a very niche blockchain related role. So I've sent 87 messages. Initially, I got 10 replies, which is okay, but not good enough. After sending the follow-up message, I got 20 replies. And you see that increasing and increasing. This is still an ongoing campaign. So you see that number going up. And what I love about this process is the best thing is when I don't get the desired results yet, I'll just add candidates to my flow and it all does it for me. So this will help me as a recruiter to go from my administrator position, copying and pasting data, doing things manually, being in spreadsheets, switching between applications, to being a gatekeeper where I get to decide over who will be contacted and engaged initially, and eventually also focus my time and attention on the actual final review of the candidates who will proceed in the process. That's what we have been building, and that's the vision and mission that we will be building, and we'll be building these automations further. I'm very happy that I am was chosen to have a voice on the recruiTECH Romania event, and I would love for you to have a great further event. Please reach out to me if you want to exchange thoughts, ideas, and also feel free to check out HeroHunt.ai. There's a free trial. So thank you, recruiTECH Romania, and enjoy the rest of your event.